All right, Mike, here we go. The Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford back in business for Sunday, June 20th, 2021. All the days are jumbled when the Leafs are no longer in, and we just have to push forward. Who knows what day it is? I do know this particular day is special because it's Father's Day. Woke up and my kids said Happy Father's Day to me, and my wife is super, super nice to me so far. So I will take it.
One day out of 365.
Yeah, well, I shall take it and I will bask in it.
Yes.
We're certainly not basking in the glory of the hockey team that you and I have been following for so long. The players who once represented the Maple Leafs off doing whatever they typically do when they get an abundance of free time, and that's their prerogative. But the business of hockey goes on with the semifinals continuing. You have Vegas down to the Habs 2-1. We can talk about that. And then the Islanders, governed by the legend Lou Lamoriello, who you have a few thoughts on, just tying up their series with the reigning champions from Tampa Bay. And of course, the business of lamenting the Leaf season that was, and trying to progress forward to an excitement for the seasons to come. Mr. Augello, good morning.
Good morning, Norm. Well, let's start with the two series. I said on the Buzzcast this week, and I continue to say so, I've never seen and you can consider this, I'm sure people when they watch this will consider this sour grapes. I've never seen a team luckier in my life than the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, I've never seen a team that was able to skate so fast with a horseshoe up their rectum. Now I'm giving them credit. They beat the Leafs, they beat Winnipeg, and right now they're up 2-1 on a team that is better than them. I mean, if it wasn't for Marc-Andre Fleury and his brain cramp late in regulation, Vegas would be up 2-1, but he did, and Josh Anderson took advantage of that, and then Josh Anderson took advantage in overtime, and I still think Vegas is going to win this series. I think I predicted them in 6, so that prediction is still online if Vegas wins today. But Montreal is exposing Vegas for some of the things that a lot of people saw them as sort of imperfections with that team last year. Mm-hmm. They're not strong up the middle. They're really strong on the wings. They have a really top level defense, at least at the top end of it. Including Alex Pietrangelo, who we'll talk about in a minute. But Fleury is great, but he does have a tendency of, making the big flub, whereas Carey Price is Carey Price. He's steady. I mean, the Pietrangelo goal in the third period was not a good goal in my estimation, but he made the big saves when they needed them, and now they're up 2-1, and I'm sure the province of Quebec is readying themselves to self-immolate if they win this series, but I think it's still got some time to go.
This is the combo for Oak Ridge Ford, Norman, London, Mike in Buffalo. I can't say I'm proud of myself, Mike, but it's something. I no longer harbor animosity towards the Habs and their fans. I don't. For years and years, anytime Montreal would progress in the playoffs and the Leafs, obviously, watching from the sidelines, I would pay attention to every single game that the Canadiens were involved in, hoping to God they would fail. I remember it may have been 2010, me messaging you frantically, may have been on Facebook Messenger or text, I don't know. The Habs were taking on, I think it was the Rangers in the semifinals. It was a Game 7, and I was freaked out that the bloody Montreal Canadiens were going to make it to the Stanley Cup Finals, and our beloved Leafs were again witnesses to what was going on and a potential greatness from these bloody Habs. And you said to me, don't worry, they're going to lose. And they lost. And I felt relieved the next day. I felt wonderful that the Habs didn't win. And, the Leafs were, of course, not winning, but neither did the Habs because they're not allowed to. I have to admit, and I don't know if I'm proud of myself or ashamed of myself, I no longer care. And it's maybe because I'm just been down this road too many times. I don't have any ill will to the Habs. Maybe it's because of the way things have happened with COVID and how the season still feels like it's kind of sort of a season, but not fully one. And maybe I wouldn't be saying that if the Leafs were still going down the road towards the Stanley Cup. I just don't care. And in a way, I feel like the Habs succeeding or any team that beat the Leafs going on and doing well is a fucking lesson to this Maple Leaf team. I'm sorry, just because you wear that crest, you're entitled to nothing. And you didn't earn it. A team that we collectively hate and loathe beat you, and they may go on all the way to the championship. You can sit there, stew, and watch. I don't know. Maybe I just feel like the animosity and the frustrations were directed at the team that I've cared for so long instead of being jealous of the teams that beat us.
Well, I mean, I get that feeling, but in the end, being somebody who was a fan for a long time and now, now a reporter and covering the league, I'm giving Montreal full credit for their success. The last thing I want to see them do is win. I just don't like the franchise. It's ingrained in my DNA. And if the first team to win a Stanley Cup since '93, that was a Canadian team, I want to be the Maple Leafs, but I just don't want it to be the Canadians.
Neither of us want the Habs to win, but if they're still in a position to do it and they do it, don't you think
I'll give them all the credit in the world.
But it's not even about that. Don't you think the Habs hoisting that cup and on Rue St. Catherine or whatever it's called, and all these Hab fans jumping around talking about how this is a divine right to be the 25th cup and the great Canadian franchise, even after it's been so shit for the last little while. Don't we want to turn back to the team that we thought was the best and go, what the hell happened to you guys? So that's what that's why I can't be pissed at the Habs for doing what they're doing.
I think we can do that without the Habs winning. So that's what I'm going to do.
Fair point.
Now the other series, at Tampa and the Islanders. I mean, I predicted the series to go 7 games. You've got 2 teams. I think I predicted Tampa to win the series, and to me, it's a workmanlike team that hustles and that plays well, and a team that does the same thing but with a little more talent. So I think in the end, the talent is going to play out. But I just look at somebody like Matt Martin on that franchise, who played well for them, who signed a free agent deal with Toronto, and because his head coach, after 2 years, decided that he couldn't play, decided that they had to get rid of him and basically give him away for a minor league goaltender to get the cap relief. And I look at this guy playing with Cizikas and Clutterbuck, and he's a demon. He's somebody that you look at that guy and you look, could the Leafs have used that guy over the last couple of years in the playoffs? And I think the answer is yes. And Leo Komarov, I mean, Leo, the same issues that went on with Leo Komarov in his last few years with the Leafs. He's not a scorer, but he's a heart and soul guy. He tries, he hits, he's got sandpaper. And again, I wouldn't have paid him $3 million on a 4-year contract. The Islanders did that, but that type of player, you see that type of player, and where he succeeds, and that's in the playoffs, and he's doing that right now.
But we know there are a lot of fashionable fans that would rather watch William Nylander comb his hair in blue and white than Leo Komarov hoist the cup in blue and white, right? We see these ex-Leafs doing well in other situations now, and we can ask what if over and over again. I just have to chalk it up to it wasn't meant to be, right? And we still, there's the frustration, and this history of futility permeates from 40 Bay and spreads on out throughout the fan base. And this is all part of the journey towards maybe one day the Leafs reaching the pinnacle. But even with all the solid ingredients that we thought the team had in the mix over this COVID shortened campaign going into the playoffs, still wasn't good enough.
No, and this week I've sort of been taking a look back at things that, didn't happen last off season and didn't happen over the last couple seasons and the reasons why. And, I'm hopefully learning from that going forward. We'll stick with the Islanders here because I was mentioning it before we started recording, with Lou Lamoriello. You can blame the current state of things with the Maple Leafs on Kyle Dubas, and he owns his share of responsibility. But you have to factor in 3 factors that he assumed when he took over as general manager. Mm-hmm. 1, the 3rd year of the Patrick Marleau contract. When Patrick Marleau was a free agent, the Leafs, the Rangers, a couple other teams were involved in negotiations for Marleau. The Leafs won it because they offered the 3rd year. Mm-hmm. Now, he was in his late 30s at that point, and he had a great first year and a good second year, but he tailed off, and the 3rd year became an albatross. And of course, because of the cap situation with the Leafs, they had to dump Marleau's contract, and that cost them a 1st-round pick. That's a hefty price to dump the 3rd year of a 3-year contract. Carolina ended up buying him out, and that's an asset that could have been used to make a trade that could have for a player that could have helped them. Instead, they had to use that 1st-round pick to clean up a mess that Lou Lamoriello and Mike Babcock created. Number 2, the Nikita Zaitsev contract. After 1 good year, Lou signs Zaitsev to a 7-year contract. 7 years at, I think it was a reasonable 4.5, but 7 years. All of a sudden, and of course, Babcock decides that he wants to make Zaitsev into a 2-way defenseman instead of sort of a power play quarterback, which was what he was in his first year. Zaitsev takes a turn for the worse. They have to clear that contract, and to clear that contract, they give Ottawa Connor Brown, who I think you could say Connor Brown would be a pretty integral part of this Leafs. And then that's just 2 of the things. The 3rd thing, and I think the biggest one, and we've harped about this many a time, after his first full season, his 2nd year, Lamoriello called up William Nylander and burned the 1st year of his contract. Then he had 61 points his 2nd year. The Leafs had the opportunity to get him locked up on a bridge deal or an extension with only 1 full year under his belt. They chose not to. Now, whether it was Lamoriello saying, I don't negotiate with guys who've had 1 good year. I mean, whatever it was, it didn't get done. That started the domino effect. So once Lou leaves for Long Island, Dubas inherits Nylander. Nylander has that 2nd good year, and then Nylander holds out. And because he held out, and because Dubas, now here's where Dubas had a part in it. Dubas should not have succumbed to the contract desires of Nylander, and when he did, he set the precedent for Marner and for Matthews, and that is where this team is right now. And all of it, and most of it, could have been avoided if Lou had maintained his fiscally responsible reputation that he has had through New Jersey and now with the Islanders. All of a sudden, the one exception to the rule was Toronto.
So was it the pressure of Toronto? Because for as larger than life as Lou is and has been portrayed and continues to be in other markets, when he came here, I think the organization and just the environment was bigger than he was used to, and maybe he did think. But Mike, for again, Hall of Famer, and look, everybody has their day, and then maybe people hang on for too long, and if he hangs on long enough to eke out a wacky, unpredictable, unexpected Stanley Cup with the New York Islanders, that's just going to add to the mystique of Lou. But coming to Toronto, so again, he still had Brendan Shanahan, I suppose, I suppose, okaying these deals. Why do you think he deviated from his typical processes to make these moves in a place like Toronto? Was it the market?
No, I don't think it was the market.
So what was it? Why did he do
I think
what he did?
I think it was the influence. I think it was the pressure that applied by Babcock, because Babcock had that 8-year contract.
So the pressure wasn't coming from up here; it was coming from below.
Yeah, in a strange sense, I do think that was part of it. Now, the thing is, he made there were good moves. The Riley contract, the Kadri contract, the Anderson free agent contract. Those were all economical and all good moves.
So if let me just throw this out, and this is a good conversation because this is what we're talking about. We don't have a team to get excited about right now. So if Dubas were to get fired later today, happy Father's Day, Kyle, you're fired, we would be in the days to come examining the Dubas era, the good and the bad.
Right.
Do we just take the bad with the good that Lou left and say it's general manager is perfect? No one is going to leave an imprint that is positive for forever.
But I do think that the bad is being forgotten now. I mean, okay, Lou he won.
Why don't we celebrate this geriatric who's at the helm of a team that just won't die?
Lou has done a pretty good job on Long Island. He inherited the guys like Bailey and Barzal and all the stars on that team. Now, he's had an effect on that team, and he's been able to get some of the players signed. But, he inherited 80% of that roster from Garth Snow. What I'm saying, it's never a completely clean picture. Okay, here everything is. There's always pluses and minuses, and what I'm saying is, everybody is decrying the mistakes that Dubas made and looking back on Lamoriello like he's a saint, like he did everything right. And I'm saying, let's keep it real here. He made mistakes, and the mistakes that he made, Dubas inherited, and the mistakes that he made, Dubas had to respond to them. So, you can add all the veterans you want, but until 30.
Yeah, don't worry so much about that, Mike. Continue your point. I'm reading these, and I just wanted to put this up. Well, continue your point.
Yeah, so I'm just saying it's like, and like I said, I mean, in the grand scheme of things now, I mean, we have to live in the here and the now, and the decisions that Dubas made and the decisions that Lou made have already been made, so you can't really, do anything about them. But I can't stand the narrative that it's all the mistakes of Dubas, when I think he assumed some mistakes that Lamoriello made and had to make tough decisions, and giving up a first-round pick to, the domino effect. They had to give up a first-round pick to clear Patrick Marleau so they could sign Kasperi Kapanen and Andreas Janssen. And then they had to trade Andreas Janssen and Kasperi Kapanen to be able to go out and sign TJ Brody.
Yeah.
Of course, all these things, what they didn't do is touch the core group, and that led into one of my other things. Alex Pietrangelo is playing pretty well for Vegas right now.
Mm-hmm.
Not a bad player. I have found out from a source he wanted to come to Toronto, and Toronto told him basically early on they weren't going to be able to afford him. Mm-hmm. Now,
they couldn't afford him because of the moves that. They made years before, and
they couldn't afford him because Kyle Dubas did not want to touch the core group. And what is going to happen this year? They're probably going to lose Zach Hyman and possibly trade Morgan Riley. Why? Because they don't want to touch the core group. How many missed opportunities? How many years are you going to continue with the same core group with the same results? And I mean, that's where I think, and I focus on Nylander because I think Nylander is the most tradable. If you trade Nylander, get young assets for him, you can re-sign Hyman. You could probably extend Riley. You probably can go out and make another move. If you don't do that, probably in the next year, one or both of those players are gone. And honestly, I don't know. You're looking at basically the core group on an island with a bunch of puzzle pieces. Mm-hmm. And I just don't know the support structure on this team over the last couple of years. I mean, it's not all these 1-year plugs It's all Thorntons and Simmons and VCs and Bogosians. It's not guys on long-term deals because they simply can't afford to sign these guys anymore. Because
So are we still connecting Lou to Dubas's inability to add more and strengthen?
I think that the ball started rolling with Lou, but then Dubas created his own monster with the negotiation on Nylander and then Marner, and then then he signed Tavares and then he signed Matt. I mean, I have no problem with the Matthews contract. But it's $11.6 million on 8 years instead of 5 years.
These guys will always make too much. They'll always make too much. They'll always make too much when they don't win, when they don't produce, when the end result that we're expecting isn't achieved. These guys make too much money. So David Hillman, you can add all the veterans you want until 34 and 16 learn how to get it done in the playoffs. It just doesn't matter, and that's sums up why the Leafs didn't beat the Habs. It's clear. 2 or 3 more goals from these two guys, and the Leafs go on and either beat the Jets or lose to the Jets. It's complete. It's who else can we pin the loss on? 7 games, they were up 3-1. Nylander was on fire. All these other guys producing. Goaltending was fine. The defense, wasn't a joke. Your top 2 players did not play to the level that they did during the regular season and were expected to in the playoffs. That's the reason the Leafs did not win. I'm sorry, you can pin it on the 2 of them.
Or 1 or 2 goals from John Tavares, who got hurt.
That's not his fault. That's not anyone's fault. That's just the way the game of hockey is played. And you know what? If the Habs wanted to rough up one of the Leafs' top guys, not to put him out for the series, but maybe send a message, they did. Good for them. Look who's playing. I mean, look who's playing. I mean, we can. This is a time for all of us, and of course the organization is, but all of us just to look inward, right, and ask ourselves, why are we fans? What are we hoping for? Is this more fodder to entrench yourself into your position, believing the team can only win in a certain way, to become more polarized? I think this fan base will never be fully on the same page until its team is deep into the playoffs. So we have another year plus to wait for that, Mike. So
yeah, and enough looking back and looking instead forward. The team did make a move this week to re-sign Jason Spezza, and give me I'm not saying give me 5 more 38-year-old forwards, but give me 5 more guys like Jason Spezza, because when the guy comes out, and I think he's genuine when he says this, I would have taken less. Because he's made his money. He just wants to stay in Toronto where his family is, and he wants to win, and he wants to win badly. And he says he'll help the organization attract more free agents, bring them into town. And I'm sure I'm taking him at his word. And he played fantastic last year, and he scored 3 goals in the playoffs. So, bringing him back at $750,000 a year is a complete low risk, fantastic move for a guy who just wants to win a Stanley Cup. And they need more of that. Now, as soon as I heard that deal was signed, and the only thing I was a little surprised at is that it happened now, because the expansion draft is in mid-July, or the NHL draft on the 23rd and 24th. And I think free agency is the 28th. It was surprising that they signed him now, because that means that they would have to protect him, but I don't think they will, because if you remember during the season when they placed him on waivers,
he'll just quit. So right. Why would Seattle take him?
Right. And that's what I think. I think Seattle, the Leafs have an interesting situation. And now the thing is, they didn't have enough forwards who qualified for the minimum games requirement for expansion. You have to have 2 forwards and 1 defenseman who played at least 54 games over the last 2 years, or 27 games last year. And depending on how they protect, they go 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and 1 goalie, then they don't have enough. And if they protect 8 skaters, then they would have enough. I'm not sure what direction they're going to go, but if they protect 8 skaters, then they might expose Spezza simply to meet that requirement.
And Seattle knows that Spezza will have no part of the Kraken.
Right, exactly. So they'll end up picking Alex Kerfoot or Travis Dermott.
Yeah.
I think the Leafs will protect 8 skaters and protect 4 defensemen, and that's probably the way they go.
Yeah, so be it. The combo for Oak Ridge Ford, Norm and Mike, thank you very much for being here, guys. If you're a father, happy Father's Day to you. This is your day, and we are pleased to be a part of it, even if it's for a short time. Leafs Nation, top targets for the Leafs should be Hamilton, Bertuzzi, Zucker, Cogliano, and Zadorov. So this will start to get excited again when we see change to the team through draft, through trade, through free agency. We'll start to get excited, and we'll start to shake off the disappointment of, I don't know if we'll fully ever shake it off, because this disappointment that we've endured, it compounds all the disappointment that we've had years prior. But we'll get excited as new blood starts to come in, and a bit of a change, a bit of a redirection of the strategy. That's the hope. So obviously Leafs Nation throwing out some potential names of players the Leafs might align themselves with down here in the next few months.
Well, it's funny because Elliot Friedman brought up Dougie Hamilton and doing the morning show on Fan 590 in Toronto, and he didn't completely rule it out, but again, Dougie Hamilton would require opening up cap space the Leafs don't have right now, and that would mean trading a Nylander or a Marner. Do I think that they will do that for Dougie Hamilton? No, because I think Alex Pietrangelo was a better fit, and they didn't do it. So, but I mean, now apparently Dougie Hamilton is an analytics darling. He's a really good offensive defenseman. He's a good power play quarterback. But I also think that if they go after Dougie Hamilton, that means probably the end of Morgan Rielly. And I don't know. I'm not sure how anxious the organization is to move away from Morgan Rielly, but they might have to because he's only got a year left in his contract. And then based on everything that's gone on the last couple of years, you have to trade a guy proactively to get a return, but you're making your team weaker if you trade Morgan Rielly.
Mike, how much cap space will the Leafs have? Kai Young wants to know.
Right now they have about a little under 12, but they only have 15 players signed under contract. So, that's not factoring in if Kerfoot gets claimed in the expansion draft or they trade him, and that would clear $3.5 million. But $3.5 million just enables you probably to sign a few more $1 million players. I just don't think. Yes, exactly, Jeremy. It's the easiest to move, and you can get something.
So Jeremy, if you're new to the podcast, is this a podcast? I don't even know if it is. So if you're new to the combo and you're joining us over the last few months, we appreciate it very much. Our growth is relatively slow. We're not the hip thing, but we're tried, tested. If you're just getting on board, you'll notice Mr. Scott in and out of the chat and on the comments and stuff. So he's been with us since the very beginning. I think Jeremy's from New Brunswick, out east. It's all one place anyway. Who cares? Kidding. Not Maritimers have a sense of humor. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but Jeremy, after the Leafs lost to the Habs in Game 7, was not too pleased, and that's an understatement. And we exchanged some words, no anger between the two of us, but there was anger, and the intention was, let's forget this effing team, screw it, we're done with it for a while, and then we'll see what happens. Clearly, Mr. Scott is back in the fold because he can't get this damn team out of his system. Not unlike all of us, right? We're done, but we're not. And then I'm not watching, and then you're kind of peeking around the corner. So one thing is he's back in the fold with us, which is great. Jeremy, you're an OG. But one thing he hasn't been able to let go of is the animosity towards Mitch Marner. And I don't think he's alone in that feeling, Mike. Mitch Marner was such a disaster in that playoffs. you have people just wanting to kick him to the curb. That is not how you. But the thing is, this frustration with this guy who is amazing in the regular season and does produce a lot of points and who works well with Austin Matthews when it's not the postseason.
Yeah.
You don't operate a franchise by getting holding a vendetta and being vindictive in the moves you make in the off season.
And I get the reaction of fans like Jeremy that, look at Marner and look at the way he performed in the series against Montreal and say, the guy makes almost $11 million and at times wasn't there. It's like, I get it. But now it's gone to the point of asset management, which is what every general manager in this league does. And, okay, if you trade Mitch Marner, you probably don't get a great return because he's got an $11 million cap hit and he's got, I think, 4 more years on it. The team would have to be willing to take that sizable cap hit with a flat cap coming off a pandemic when most of these teams are not in a financial situation like the Leafs are. So do you do that? Now, the only benefit on that one is trading Marner after the Leafs pay a signing bonus, so he would be a league minimum salary for a year. But after they pay him $12 million because he gets all his money except for the minimum contract. Okay, great. Then, but the problem is that those teams have to pay him for 3 more years and pay the full freight for 3 more years. So they would have to be financially willing to do that. With Nylander, he's got 3 more years left. The cap hit's under $7 million. He had a great playoff. He has heavy signing bonus. His cap hit or his money out is $2.5 million after he's paid the signing bonus. You get more back for Nylander in a deal than you would for Marner. And it's not based on the value of the player. It's based on the value of the player and the money that he makes. And that's why I keep saying, I have not harped on trading William Nylander over the last 3 years because I hate him. I get that response from people.
People aren't listening.
Yeah, it's like, okay.
People aren't listening. This is the polarization of a fan base. That is the Toronto Maple Leafs. People are not listening. It's like what's happening in the United States with the QAnon versus people who are not. Yeah, but I'm being honest.
I get it.
It's the truth. It's like you walk outside and say, hey, it's daytime. No, it's not. It's night. Because I was told it's night by somebody who I believe in more strongly than you. What? So with the Marner or with Nylander. And again, we get shit on for hating Nylander. Show me, prove it. That's not the truth. We've been going on about the same thing forever, and it still holds true to this day. And again, it's on tape, right?
Nylander is an extremely talented player, but I do not believe in the strategy of paying 50% to 4 forwards. And that wasn't the original plan, but the pandemic has put in that position because the cap is going to be flat the next 4 years. You have to adapt, and the adapting here is not letting your top defenseman who's 27 walk in free agency in a year, and who he'll be still in his prime on a new deal. Or letting your best 2-way forward go to the Edmonton Oilers or Detroit Red Wings or wherever Zach Hyman's going to go because he's going to hit it big because he had hit a big year. I think this team takes a step, no matter who they acquire in free agency or trade. I think they take a step back if they lose Hyman or Riley. And
that is quite possible. I was going to ask you if you feel like the Leafs could take a step back by the time the next season starts when you examine the moves they make and reconfigure the team and offer opportunity to some younger guys. You got guys like Nick Robertson who want to come up and Rasmus Sandin who will probably take a greater role. You can't expect unless you brought in more veterans who are on board to win a championship, unless you have, a remodeled and refocused group of players who are coming off this disappointment to support these younger cats who are going to get more ice time and a more opportunity to integrate themselves into the mix. You can't expect the team to be much better than the one that just won the North Division and then shit the bed in the playoffs, at least over the games 5, 6, and 7. So yeah, you're right. And then what to do about Marner, right? We're all mad at him. He sucked. He was terrible. But before the playoffs started, were any of us wanting him traded? We're thinking, oh, this guy, him and Matthews are going to be dynamite, and they're going to dispatch the Habs in 4 or 5, and then move on and beat the. We were right there. I thought they were going to clean everybody's clock and get through to the semifinals. I was expecting the guys who were doing it to continue doing it. Right. They didn't, and now it's just this anger towards Mitch Marner, as if he's a piece of shit. He's awful. He's terrible. That's not the truth. That's not the case. He had a terrible playoff, and I'm sure he feels like shit about it when he's not golfing and whining and dining, and that's his prerogative.
But Leo, let me just finish it off with this. The thing is, it's like, and I've heard other people sort of doing a postmortem on the Leafs this year, and they say, okay, we can't trade Nylander now because he had a great playoff, and we should try to trade Marner because he had a bad playoff. You cannot think about things in a 1-year window. You have to think of things going back a few years and going forward a few years. You have to have a perspective about what's going on. And honestly, it's all about asset management. The Dubas will go out in free agency. You could see, like, say, and I'll just use this as an example. You could see Tyler Bozak come back with the Leafs on a like not a league minimum deal, but a reasonable contract, and him be the third line or center to replace Kerfoot. You could see that happen. I think there's he left on good terms with the Leafs. He won his Stanley Cup.
Remember, he was a guy everybody hated.
Yeah, but as a third line center, they hated him as a number 1 center playing with Phil Kessel. The last year of his,
the Leafs had no one else to do it.
Right, exactly. But now as a third line, when he was a third line center playing with James Van Riemsdyk and playing on the power play, he was extremely effective. Now, I don't know, he's not the same player that he was 3 years ago, but that's probably, but I'm saying you can bring guys like that back. You can bring this year's version of Joe Thornton. You can go out and re-sign Zach Bogosian. There'll be a whole group, I'd say 5 or 6 free agents, or guys that they acquire in trades that will make people excited about this team again. But again, unless the core group is changed, I don't know whether anything will change.
OG's Converse, what do you think? Let us know in the comments. If you're listening to this after the fact, that's okay too. The comment section below the post on YouTube will be lively, so you can say your piece there. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, we appreciate you doing that as well. Just a few more minutes with Mike and myself. We're doing shows once a week, and then we have the Ask Mike segments midweek in the community portion of the YouTube channel. If you guys have any questions for Mike, you can leave them in community. Don't leave them below this post on YouTube. We get, there's 100+ comments after every.
Yeah, I'm an OF for old fogey because I thought that the questions were in the comments and not in the community. So now I know where I'm going here. So anyway,
it's only English that I'm presenting you with, Mike. And I know you have the various degrees from the Genesee County Community College, and it's an amazing place to be educated. What else do you want to hit on before we take off, Mike? Because look, we're just pouring over the minutia of another failed season, and people are still stinging from the loss, and we're very envious of what we're seeing of the teams that have left the Leafs behind and how they're progressing towards reaching the ultimate goal for them. And one of the 4 will hoist the Stanley Cup at this point. To this point, the Habs still have an opportunity to do it. And if they do, I'm going to have to swallow my pride.
No.
but I will not be that upset about it because Toronto sports has done really well. So if it's Toronto versus Montreal thing, there's really no comparison there, I believe. But if it's a hockey thing, it's going to look good on the bloody Maple Leafs. You had your opportunity to bury this team. You didn't. They went all the way, won a 25th Stanley Cup, and we still are mired in futility.
Yes,
we deserve it.
I'll store up on barf bags if it happens. But no, let me just to finish off here. I went to the Yankees Blue Jays game on Tuesday. I watched all 3 of the Yankees Blue Jays games in Buffalo. And first of all, it's just it's a once in a lifetime experience for them playing here. And it's eventually when the border opens up, the Jays will be up at Rogers Center, and everybody, which I'm sure everybody in Toronto wants that to happen. And I'll tell you, I think the Blue Jays lineup is unbelievable. I think they're, with Guerrero and Chet and Simeon, their pitching staff is so brutal, and their bullpen is so ridiculous. They lost 2 guys in their bullpen in that 3-game series. I mean, you can have all the offensive in the world. If you don't have enough pitching, you're not.
Yeah. I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, it's there's hope for guys like Nate Pearson and Manoah. You've got some good arms,
sure.
But Atkins and Shapiro, if they're not going out and spending big money to find at least 2 starters and about 3 guys in your bullpen, they should be fired, because that's all you need to be in competition with Tampa Bay and the Yankees next year. That their offense is fantastic, but you can't do it all on just pure offense. You can't win
7.5 games out of a wild card spot right now. Lots of baseball to play, and if the Jays can get hot and win, 22 of 30 and put themselves in position into September, it's going to be a fun finish. The Yankees don't score any runs. So I always go by run differential, Mike. And the Jays aren't at the level of a Tampa or a Houston, but or a Chicago White Sox. Wow. But I mean, they're a plus 40. So being under 500, that record is not necessarily reflective of the way they produce runs for and against. So it'll even itself out down the line as long as they continue that trend. With the Yankees, a -1. They've scored the fewest amount of runs in the AL East. And I think that just has to do with the fact that, they've had some injury problems and they're just not firing on all cylinders. The Yankees are one of those teams that can, pick it up. But man, they're in the hole when it comes to run differential, and like way in the hole. So that's something to consider. And again, we're talking about how, offense is amazing, but you still need to have the pitching, right? Because offense gets them out of their seats and gets fans excited when home runs are flying over the fence. But it's pitching and defense that will ultimately win you the big prize. So let me just ask this question, and then we'll conclude the show. We talk about having to potentially pull someone out of the Big Four to free up some cap space to afford the team an opportunity to bring in more support.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle Dubas, he's a forward-thinking guy, and look, he's not perfect. He's made some moves that he would like to take back, not unlike every single GM in the league who's ever operated. Do you think that this team, never mind taking a step back, do you think this team should philosophically change the way it approaches the game? And I'm not saying, philosophy is a deep word, and it's like, are you now not wanting to score goals and just batten down the hatches at home? But I'm talking about like philosophically maybe change the way their approach and how they center the where they center their focus. So on the Big Four right now, if they did move one of these guys out, whether it's Marner or Nylander, the personnel they bring in, will this allow the organization now to look at itself as more of a kind of a 200-foot hockey team, maybe score fewer goals, maybe get Austin Matthews, he'll score his 40, but get him more devoted to pure defense? Do you think that's what the Leafs have to do in order to maybe take a thorough and proper step forward as an organization and make true progress in the playoffs when they get their chance? Last word to you.
it's dangerous to sort of put your finger up to the wind and say whether what direction it's blowing in terms of like changing the focus of your team. But if you look at the 4 teams that are in the semifinals now, they're all strong goaltending, all big defenses. Some have better offensive defensemen, some are just more stay-at-home guys, but all make it tough to get to the net. Tampa Bay's got offense as good as Toronto. Montreal and the Islanders and Vegas not as much, but they're just solid throughout and big. And that's where I think, you've got 2 top centers in Matthews and Tavares. You need to rely on them to help create your offense. You need a playmaker like Marner to help either Tavares or Matthews score goals. You can give up a little offense if your defense improves. I just don't know whether, right now, Jack Campbell had 1 good half season. Whether he's the goaltender that can carry them to the promised land, whether they allow Morgan Riley to leave in free agency after next year, whether the defense with Rasmus Sandin is good enough to have success. I think they need to re-sign Riley and maybe even add a defenseman, because I think the strength on the blue line is extremely important. I think you see with Vegas and you see with the Islanders and you see with Montreal and Tampa that they're deep 3-4 in quality defensemen. And I'm not saying like Justin Hall's not a quality defenseman, but I think he's a better fit on a bottom pairing than in the top 4. They need to be stronger on defense. They need to be tougher up front. And those are moves that can be made. I just don't know whether the organization has deviated from that offense first mindset. And I think we'll find out this offseason. I think Dubas deviated from it slightly last year, but really he didn't do it enough. And you see the teams that are surviving and they're tough almost throughout.
It'll be an interesting off season. We're into it now, but when it comes to Kyle Dubas making moves, again, he's in his first go with an NHL organization, very young man. The expectation is he's going to work with several NHL organizations throughout his managerial career. If that's the path he chooses for the rest of his life, is this in a lot of ways the breeding ground, the testing area for the kind of hockey he would like to see his teams play. Again, he's still learning. This boy wonder, this idea that he's so far ahead of his time is ridiculous. He's still trying to figure out how the formulas, how this is going to work. But at the core of everything he does, he has a value system for what kind of hockey he wants. At least at this point, we know it's speed and skill. He's deviated from those core principles to try to make the team better. And look, at the end of the day, the top 2 guys, the speed and the skill, the top 2 guys that he invested in are the ones who let him down. So how does he reconcile that as he goes into the next phase of his managerial career with the Maple Leafs, and potentially his last if he can't make the moves to set this team on a course where he feels comfortable with it, the organization feels comfortable with it, and the fans to a larger extent, for the most part, can feel comfortable with it. Mike, thanks for your time today. Give your best my best to your mom and the family. Go Blue Jays. No Yankees. But we'll have another discussion here in 7 days' time about baseball, and I'm sure a lot of Maple Leafs, and who knows if the Habs are still alive or not. If they are, it's just got to throw up your hands. If they're not, we can celebrate a little bit. Okay. For Mike, I'm Norm. We're up.